Right. We'll get started in a moment. We'll just see if a few people pop in. I can see some of the lights are making me look a weird colour, so I'm just going to change some lighting. There we go. That's much more natural, less washed out. Okay, cool. No one joined us yet, so we'll see. In the last live stream, we tried to get I tried to get the Copperhead working. I've actually had a response from Castle, and it turns out that it gets recognised as a Mamba XLX2, but it's the same settings. So using the phone that's actually sat in front of me doing the streaming, I was able to connect to the B-Link. That phone's an iPhone 12 Max. The one that I was using was a 6S, and it just seems to be a phone issue. So that's sorted now. This thing is smooth as hell. I am so happy with it. Also in the last stream, I was having a few challenges with links and skids and link lengths and things, and that's all been fixed. So we now have the frame together. So I've installed one of my custom skids because we're going with custom gearbox. We've got my super low sliders on, and we've gone for some GPM aluminium upper links, and the lower links are actually center of gravity remote control. And if I hold this thing level, you can see that actually when there's a bit of weight on it, when the gearbox is in it and everything, look at that skid. That skid is properly angled, and those links that Barry's made are just tucked up and right out the way. So I can't wait to get this thing out on the trails. The cameras have a weird fisheye on it. I can assure you that I've got pinion angles correct, and the wheelbase is about 315 millimeters. I'm hoping these aluminium links will hold up on the top. They held up to some pretty good abuse last time. I've actually installed them so that the knuckles are further forward, so there's loads of clearance, loads of space there. We're running the Holmes Hobbies servo, but for now, let's put the gearbox together. So once the gearbox is together, we can install it on this truck, and hopefully it'll all fit and it'll all be good. So the gearbox still not been released on Thingverse yet because I want to make sure that this latest iteration actually works. Before I get started, I'm going to open my beer because it's Friday, and why not? So happy Friday, everyone. It's all right, it's non-alcoholic. So let's take a look at this gearbox again. I've actually used this Castle box to spray a load of high performance lithium grease onto the gears so that they've got a really thin coat of grease that will stick to them and stay on them. But yeah, I'll tip the camera down and off we go. Let me know if you've got any questions or if you've got any comments. Like, subscribe, you know, all the usual. In fact, talking about subscribe, thank you everyone that has subscribed, because having 1,000 subscribers has allowed me to turn on the relevant things to be able to stream from my phone, which has worked immensely better than my laptop. Right, so this gearbox, just to recap, it recycles a load of the stuff from the internals of a TRX4 Sport gearbox, or the single speed gearbox. You can recycle most of a 2-speed gearbox. It's just this really long shaft that you get in a Sport on the 2-speed has like some extra material on it, which means it doesn't quite fit the way it should do. The gearbox, the gearbox sits in this rear housing. This is the motor plate. Motor plate sits on the front. So it's kind of like a TRX gearbox. This isn't supposed to be super lightweight, although I will say that the casing, if my scales fire up, the casing weighs 57 grams, and I think the skid weighs around about 40 grams. So it's 100 grams in total, and then whatever your TRX gearbox things way. So it's not super light compared to a TRX standard skid and gearbox, but it does give you that magical 33% overdrive. So we're going to start, we've got 3 holes we need to put a bearing in on this one, 4 holes we need to put a bearing in on this one, and 2 bearings go into here. I've also shaved this down so I don't have to hammer it in and look like a nutter on the channel. So the bearings, I've adjusted the tolerances so they're a bit harder to push in. He says, just pushing them in. So they are push to fit, so there's no cracking or twisting, but at the same time, they don't just flop out. Some take a bit more pushing than others, depending on where they are, because this bridge here is very thin, because this open end is for one of the gears to stick out, which is in the box somewhere. So there we go. So they pop in snug, but not ridiculously tight. It is, you can just push them in with your fingers, which is great because if you have a bearing die, you can just push it out. It's not a problem. This one's got 4, so I'll just get those in. All right, the tolerances on this piece were before I changed them, so they feel a little bit loose. My latest settings have got them nice and tight. It's a really fine balance with holes, because to get things dimensionally correct, you have to set all those settings. But then if the material shrinks, then your holes shrink. Or if it shrinks the other way, expands, then you have to change the size of holes. It can be a bit of a dark art. So I'm just going to squeeze the bearings into this bridge piece. This uses a double bearing simply because I printed it 8mm thick to make it nice and stiff and strong, and the bearings are 4mm wide, but I thought if I put a double bearing in there, it just helps with a bit of the load from the spur gear, because actually that's where most of the motor energy is coming through. So that was simple. So now we need some gears. So we've got these gears that have been freshly covered in lithium grease, so they're feeling sort of matte and slippy and low friction. All I did was just get a box, get some of this WD-40 white lithium, chuck them in the box, spray it in, cough a little bit because I forgot to close the box before I did it, and then leave them overnight, and it's dried and left. You can kind of see left like a residue everywhere. That's the lithium grease. So what I'm also going to do this time that I didn't do last time is just put a few extra shims around the thinner gears. There's 2 gears that are about 7mm depth, and the other one is 8mm. So I just need to put some shims on to stop them from slipping around too much. And all I'm going to do is pop some 0.3mm shims on each end, and that should, if my calculations are correct, in fact I'm going to put 2 on one end and 1 on the other, and that should give me 1mm of shimming spacing, whatever you want to call it. And if I remember the right hole for that to go through, then I'm just going to check, in fact that's the wrong side, just going to check that that all lines up nicely. And that's because I put the shims on the side that have the pin on them, so the double shim goes on the side with the pin. On the other side of the gear there's a little bit of a ridge that just captures it, so just going to close that up and then just take a look at it. Fortunately I've left the bottom, and yeah, there's 0 play on that. When I tighten it up, that's not going to bind. It's spinning nice and freely, so that's good. So it's a case of building the rest, and also remembering to put these in the right way round. Now this smallest gear, which is the 27 tooth, faces out towards the front because that gives you the fastest speed. This big monster, if I remember rightly, I believe that's a 32, it might be a 36. Correct me in the comments if you know what I'm doing. That one goes out to the rear because that provides the most reduction. And so whatever those two ratios are, and if I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact tooth counts, it essentially means from what they're driven, from what drives them, that gives you 33% overdrive in the gearbox, which is great because it means that you don't necessarily need to buy Traxxas's hugely expensive hardened overdrive bits. So that should give me enough to work with. So I just need to get that right. So there are two outputs done. Our middle gear, idler gear, I reused the long central shaft. You can cut this down if you prefer. I don't. I just try and find a length of it that's reasonably biased to the front. And then, as with everything else, some 3mm shims on each side, 0.3mm shims on each side. And in fact, I've just realised that on the larger, wider gear, I've put thick shims on it, and I don't want to do that because it'll be too wide for the casing. So I'm just going to pop those off and just put a thin shim on that one. As you can tell, I haven't written the instructions for assembling this because what I'm going to do is watch the live stream, cringe at how bad I am at presenting, and then write the instructions from there. Or just point people to the live stream if it kind of makes some kind of coherent sense. Right, so that's all shimmed. So now I'm just going to push. Yeah, that bearing's definitely very loose in that side, but it's not the end of the world. I might just pop a bit of super glue or grease on there. But yeah, that's spinning nice and freely. There's no friction on there. It's, you know, very gentle finger movements, and it's loose enough. So now I will get this case together. So this should be relatively easy. Just need to find the right length bolts. And what I've done with these holes is make the holes in the outer case slightly wider so that you're not biting the screws into there, and you're actually only biting the screws into the other side, just to make it fit a bit better. Right. Talked about this last time. If you're going to use power tools, use ones with mechanical clutches when you're working with 3D printed parts, unless you really want to rip them to pieces, which, you know, you're more than welcome to if you can print another one. But if you're buying them from Shapeways or wherever, I wouldn't recommend it. There we go. And then that final one, there's just a few little print nodules in there. There we go. Great. So we've got a gearbox that is, hopefully you can pick it up, spinning really smoothly, super smooth actually. Just check these shafts for play. Yeah, usual. Yeah, those pins can move around quite a bit, but that bearing popping out will be an issue. So just for that one, when I reprint it, I'm going to use a slightly tighter tolerance on that side. But just for that one, just a dab of super glue, because actually it's just an idler pulley. It's not going to cause much of an issue. I've put the glue on, and the glue's gone onto the outer shielding and the bearing case, so that'll just tighten up. That'll be fine. It's not going to get on the bearings or anything. Right, so that's that part built. Now the next part to build is the the motor plate. Right, let's get this sorted. So this shouldn't be too difficult. Ooh. So I might have put a screw that's a bit too long in there, because because it's decided to lock before I've got to the end, and in fact I have, so that's not a problem. Okay, so the motor plate goes on, and what I'm going to do is then, hey Chris, I'm going to build up the, what am I going to do? I'm going to put in my motor bolts just to make it a bit easier. Then I'm going to build up the spur and make sure that's ready. And then we'll install the motor. And then we'll attach this plate to the gearbox, pop the gearbox on the truck, and then see if my shell still fits. Because I have really bad luck with body pins, to the point that my remote still has body pins dangling off it from when I lose some on every single trip. I have packs of body pins here because I'm a bit of a monster and roll my crawler all the time. Now, when I put this onto scattergun rails, I printed off a 3D printed piece that I then screwed into my shell, but I also glued it as well for extra strength. That works fine on a scattergun, but on these new rails, it doesn't quite fit. So I need to reevaluate my whole shell mounting situation. And this is probably about half of what this shell was originally, due to ripping the rear off it, punching holes in it to get the shock hoops in, and generally cutting it down because I've got a different shell somewhere, but we'll sort that out later. Oh, and this is non-alcoholic beer, by the way. Beavertown Laser Crush, really nice. So let's do motors. For people who've been following along, you should know this is the Holmes Hobbies 6-shooter, the limited edition motor. It is absolutely amazing. It is so smooth, has as much power as you could need for the kind of application that it's for. Compared to a Puller Pro, it's not as powerful, I guess, not as powerful. But it's a 6-pole motor, so it is way smoother. And on a truck that in total, even though it's made out of metal and there's no carbon fibre and nothing's made out of plastic and it's got a bit of brass on the front, that truck weighs 2.5 kilos. So this motor is more than enough for it, more than powerful enough. And on that copperhead, it's really cool. So, right, let's do it this way. Let's get this spur installed. So most of these shims, in fact I'm going to use thicker shims for this because I don't think it needs too many. I'm going to put 0.9 mil of shims on, in fact 0.6 mil of shims on, and the shims are just to make this plate, which is the slipper plate, stick proud of the bearing. Because otherwise, as you tighten everything up, the slipper plate sort of sits on the outer case of the bearing rather than the inner race, and just means that you drag it against the plastic and you end up with a wobbly slipper, wobbly spur gear, which is not what you want. Wobbly spur gears make a hell of a noise. And yeah, so we've got the crush washers, we've got the flat washer for the bolt to go against, and we're just going to do that up finger tight-ish for now, and we'll tighten it up in a bit. So that spins nice because it's got that double bearing in it. Oh, that spins really nice actually. That's great. I can see that that is a wobbly spur. Not much I can do about that. I can kind of twist it around a bit and find the best point for it to sit, but they're all wobbly, so it's not worth worrying about. Get the motor bolts to just stick through, and get a 2.5 mil. And so on this gearbox there's 2 holes on the back. That's so that you've got access to your motor bolts. And then as you find the right holes in the motor, and you get those located. So I've turned them probably like 2 turns just so that the motor's attached, so I can wiggle the motor around, so I can play the pinion dance where I have to try and squeeze a pinion into this hole somewhere. And for anyone that's saying this looks dark on camera and you can't see where it is, in real life it's exactly the same. So I've just got to turn the motor so that the flat part that the pinion's going to sit on is in the right place. I'm going to take my pinion and just try and squeeze that onto the motor, which I have done. And then I've just got to line up. Yeah, that is on the flat part, that's great. There we go. Right, so my pinion is now in the right place, although I've just, yeah, that's fine. So I need a piece of paper. What I'm going to do is take this piece of paper, slip it between the pinion and the spur, and then start working on that gear mesh. And you only need the tiniest bit. It only needs to be the height of the pinion and the spur, because the idea is it's just providing the right amount of space between those two. And then what you do is squeeze them as tightly as you can. And if you really have a quite egg-shaped spur, just squeeze them as much as possible together. If you've got a normal shaped spur, it doesn't matter too much. A bit of a challenge in terms of the paper's in the way of my bolt. There we go. Yeah, and then you squeeze the motor and the spur together. Get them absolutely squashed on each other. Crank that down. And you whip out the piece of paper. And then you'll feel just the slightest bit of slack. It's probably, oh, you're talking like a degree, 0.2 of a degree, like just the tiniest bit of rotation that just means that as this turns, if there's any variation in the spur, it's not a problem. And those teeth aren't sort of pushed against each other, they're just ever so slightly apart, which just gives you that little bit of wiggle, but the pressure plates line up properly. You can see they line up perfectly. Right, so that's the gearbox mounted on that side. We join these two together and push it all the way through. We pop this gear on here, so that gear is now sliding through on that spur. And then we've got an awkward move to do in a moment, but not too awkward. So we get that gear so that it's tight, pull it all the way in, close this up, and then 2 bolts hold it together. These are recessed bolts as well, so hopefully don't interfere with the spur too much. Whoops. There we go. Just didn't quite have enough torque on there. So with that going in, we just want to check this spur for drift. And actually, I need to put a few more shims just behind this spur and just move the pinion back, because I'm not sure how much the camera catches it, but there's a little pin just coming out there, this little pin popping out there. If that pops out, then the whole thing breaks. So that's not the end of the world, but that's why I was shimming it in the first place, to just make sure. But because we've already set our meshes, it's not too much of a challenge. So I just, did I do that finger tight? Finger tight-ish. Here we go. Right. So that's our nuts, our crush washers. Just letting all of those drop off. And then I'm going to guess at, I put 0.6 on, so I'm going to put another 1.2 mil on, which seems like a lot, so I can probably adjust some of these tolerances. And in fact, I could shim it from the other end as well, which I'm probably going to do, because I don't want... Oh, actually, no, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother it too much. Yeah, let's just trying to work this one out. So yeah, we'll shim it from the spur end, because it really doesn't matter. And in fact, yeah, with that installed now, I can see, yeah, there's a few bits there. I can see how many I need to put on. So yeah, probably got about 1.5. So I can start changing those tolerances as well. So when I watch this back, I can probably move the motor forwards by probably about 1 mil. Right, let's get this spur back on. Easy as that. Just goes, pops straight on, because you can slide it forwards and backwards. And then hopefully when I tighten it up, there'll be no way for that pin to fall out. If there is, then we will just keep shimming it until it fits. But this is pretty good, because this keeps it from being too close to anything else. So people watching, if you wanted one of these, are you going to print your own? Are you wanting it off Shapeways? Or are you expecting me to spend 36 hours of print time doing one for you? Let me know. Oh, some of those spacers have just not quite sat properly, so I'll just have to work on this slightly. Just need to get those shims to sit flat. There we go. We've got a nice straight. Do you know what? I'm not seeing any chat today. Let me just check. Perfect. Right. So now I've just got to go through getting that pinion to attach to the flat side, which is there. Cool. There we go. So we have a TRX4 overdrive gearbox built and installed. So what I'll do is I'll grab a receiver. Yes, it will be available on Thingverse. While I would love to print and sell them, I don't think I've got the time or the patience. It took a fair bit of printing, but now I've got the right settings, I can just chuck those on the Thingverse for people to do themselves. The main thing is making sure that you've got dimensional accuracy and the right sized holes with that dimensional accuracy. That's why I have been printing it in PETG, mostly because I managed to get a wisp free, string free PETG print, but also because it doesn't shrink as much, so it's dead easy to do dimensionally accurate stuff. PLA can shrink between 2 and 4%, which can make stuff a little bit erratic. Right, so here we go. That is a copperhead on a 33% overdrive gearbox. And that's with 10 degrees of motor timing on full speed. Not sure what the beeping was. There we go. I don't know why it beeps 3 times every time I... Oh, that's annoying. Yeah, I've forgotten to disable the warning beeps. Interesting. I'll sort that out later. Right. Cool, yeah, good evening too. Just seeing people pop up in the chat. So, installation of this. What we'll do is we'll just pop it out of the ESC and we'll go back down to the, well, to the truck view. Installation is surprisingly simple, so here we go. I don't know how easy it is to get the gearboxes in and out of your crawlers, but this is how hard it is on mine. So I've got my super long gear shaft and my not so long gear shaft, and I'm just going to line these up correctly so that they're to some degree clocked. And this bit I haven't actually done yet, so this is going to be new to me as to whether it fits or not. All the measurements say it should, but who knows. So when you install it, you grab the bottom shaft and just click that on, and then you put the rear one on. Grab your pins that you've hopefully saved in a suitable place for if you're doing this on a live stream with no previous fitting together. This thing literally came off the printer today because it's the final version. So we do the pins for both shafts, and what this does is just make it a bit easier when we come to putting everything else away. Now I can see a little clearance issue, but I'm not bothered. We will work through all of that, and then I'm just rotating the spur to get the hole in the drive shaft to meet the hole in the output shaft. Right, that's the tough part. The interesting part now is to try and line up the holes. So I've got some bolts somewhere that I was going to use to hold this together. So I'm going to pop one of those in the front. So I'm going to do the front one first. So that goes into the bridge. And it is just a case of screw it into the bridge. Right, and once you've located that one, the rest, he says, famous last words, should be relatively painful. Painless even. God. Right, and if these aren't too long, then it's just 4 bolts. I think that might be too long, that one. I'll find a shorter one. Oh, it's just ever so slightly too long. What's the problem? I've got a box somewhere of shorter ones. Turning my heater down. There we go. Right, so 4 bolts in the base. The bolts are countersunk in, printed countersunk. This PETG base has been sanded, so it's super smooth. Super smooth. You can see the tools just don't catch on it at all. And unfortunately, because it's a live stream, there are some minor fitment issues where I've got some rod ends in the wrong place, and that's because I was trying to make sure my 4-link didn't interfere with it, and essentially I've got my 4-link so high that on this side it is stopping the spur from turning. But that's not a problem because I can change the location of that, so I can make that lower. And to be honest, I was expecting something like that anyway. So we're going to do a little bit of link wrangling, which will be interesting because getting to them is now a bit of a pain. So we're going to move this link that's here to one of these other holes, and that should sort out most things apart from my high clearance. Yeah, my drive shafts are now just rubbing on the motor because I've got the motor so stupidly low that it's a problem. And in fact, there might be an easier way to sort this, which would be to chuck some spacers in. So, do I just put it in on spacers, or do I carry on? Yeah, I brought the whole gearbox and motor probably 2 or 3 mil too far towards me. So reprinting a skid would actually sort all of that. But I still think those links can go lower, and then that would sort out the problems. But yes, the suspension can't quite go all the way down because the motor is so low. So I'm going to have to take a quick look at that. So I will pop out this link and then see where we're at. Because this is the challenge. I want the motor as low as possible, but obviously sat on top of a drive shaft and everything else is probably a bit too much. In fact, before I mess around with these links, I'm just going to see what happens if I... Oh, that was a bit silly. If I actually take it off and just put it on some spacers, because it might just be that it's too low. But I believe that name's already taken for a gearbox, so please don't quote me on that. Right. Let's get this link back together. So I just dropped everything on the table. Okay, so if you weren't running the Team Edition rails, if you were running a normal scattergun or any other kind of flat railed chassis, then you probably would be absolutely fine. But I've built this truck, if I move the motor out the way, you can probably see, but I've built this truck, so the lowest point of this truck, where it hits the table, is actually below the stub axles. So on 4 point whatever J concepts are, 4.75, 4.78 wheels, the skid sits 48 mil off the ground, which is stupidly low. A standard Traxxas is 80 mil, so it is insanely low. And what that does is, because of the portals, raises the height of the portals, so that causes problems in that respect. Now, if I can find all the bits that I've just dropped. Yeah, there we go. So what I'm going to attempt to do, and I might do a very, very, very bad job of this, but we'll see. What I'm going to attempt to do is install this with some spacers underneath it, and what I might be able to do is just print a printed adapter that lifts it. I mean, the spacers will be fine because the gearbox itself, it doesn't need any torsional strength from being bolted to anything. It's designed to be independently strong. Just need to find one more little spacer. Right, answers on the postcard. Will a 2 or 3 mil spacer be enough? There's only one way to find out, and that is to just go for it. I am going to do 2 on one side and then hope I can kind of lift it and jiggle it for the others. Right, so it is currently held up by 2, and then I'll try and get these other 2 in, even though I've managed to lose one of the bolts. Can't have gone far. That's an impressive feat, to lose an entire bolt to literally nowhere. Good job, I have a box of them here. There we go. Right, so bear with me as I do the majorest surgery of trying to install spacers with 2 hands. I'm not sure it's going to be the easiest thing, but right, our spur gear turns. That's a good start. That's a really good start. So now our spur gear turns, let's have a look at other things. So do we now have clearance to compress? Oh, that screw just appeared from somewhere. Do we have clearance on the suspension? The front just doesn't quite go all the way down, and that's because the motor is sat on the drive shaft and it's having a little chew through those front links. So I'm going to drop those front links down because I don't think they need to be that high. Doesn't need that amount of separation. And then I'm going to put some bigger spacers in because the Traxxas one's on spacers, so if it's good enough for them, and boy have I given Traxxas products a bit of a kicking and a bashing in the past. And I mean literally driving them, not in terms of them being rubbish products. If it works for them, then it should work for me. That's my theory. So they are an extra 1mm spacer. Will that be enough? Probably not. So we'll go with the 2mm if I can find a third 2mm spacer. There we go. Right. Wish me luck. Now, I'm not too fussed about raising the height of the gearbox because everything else is so low. And seeing as the motor is below the servo and sort of tucked down within the chassis, doesn't seem like the end of the world to me. Right. Okay, good. There's still plenty of bite in those screws. In fact, I'm going to just dig out those longer ones that I had for the front, just for a bit of reassurance. Good. Good. Right. Let's get these rear spacers swapped over. This is more of a challenge. There we go. So let's have a look. They seem suitably overkill. Great. Let's go with that one. Where did I put those tweezers? I'm so disorganized when I'm doing my live streams. Do apologize. Right, we're going with the tweezers to see. Oh, raise the camera slightly. What I'm doing is I'm getting these little spacers, popping the little spacers in, and just using those to hold the gearbox up for now. I can always print a better support if I feel I need one, but for now I think I'm fine. Well, that's far too long. Right, we'll just go with one of those for now. Sorry, I've been ignoring any messages. I've been staring down at the truck. So appreciate you all watching though. That's cool. Right, here we go. So this is the actual bolt up. Right, those are bitten in nicely. And now, can my suspension go all the way? There or thereabouts. That's not a million miles off. It is, yeah, it is just nudging the motor now. So I think I'm going to lower these front links and then put some wheels on it and drive it about this table, which is an absolute mess, but who cares? Well, you know what? Yeah, sod it. Let's put some wheels on and see how it moves. Right, ESC. As with all of my ESCs, this one's on Velcro, so it can go on and off really easily. Really good for when you're doing development and changes and live streams and all the rest of it. I need to remind myself, like, remember that red is A, white is B, and black is C. I just seems to fall out my brain every time. Sensor cable somewhat out the way. We'll just add some little Velcro straps somewhere. I don't know where I've put them. Oh, there they are. Just do some of the world's worst cable management just to make sure we don't burn any holes in anything or set anything on fire. Right, receiver, again, just stuck on with Velcro. Probably need to connect something together. There we go. ESC. Bit of power to the servo, that might help. There we go. Grab all of those cables and set off people's OCD. Now, I would love to say that when I finish this truck off in a bit, that I will do better cable management. But I'll be honest, I won't. As long as they're not being eaten by your spare gear, you don't need to panic too much about cables. Right. We will pop some wheels on. I've got to put the wheels on the right side as well, because I run offset wheels. My rear wheels are slimmer by 6mm, I'd like to say, which helps you get through gates, but also TRX has terrible turning, awful turning compared to anything else, even though I've got the Ackerman knuckles on there, and having thinner rear track just seems to help with the turning a little bit, and weirdly side hilling. I haven't worked out how it helps side hilling, but I can understand how it helps turning, because the push is coming from a different place and you've not got the drag of a wider whatever. Right, okay, cool. Right, so that's it. Let's take a look at how it navigates this really difficult crawling course of that. Oh wow, that startup is super gentle. Yeah, so the skid has low-sided itself on a crawler stand, which, you know, it's not necessarily a bad thing. So let's just see what it's like when it is actually just low-sided. Yeah, it just drags around on the sliders. That is an exceptionally smooth ESC. Super quiet as well. Not like your usual outrunner squawk. Why is my servo? Oh, my servo is backwards because it used to be in a different mount. Bear with me. What was it? Yeah, well, I'll share the mess. It's happily crawling backwards over all the mess I've got in here. That does feel the wrong way around. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I am pretty happy with that. So now I just need to work out clearance for the motor. So what I'll do is I'll grab this phone out of this mount and just show you. Can I flip the camera? Can flip the camera. So that motor is tucked. I mean, bearing in mind that I've put some 6mm spacers on the gearbox, that is tucked right in that skid. So if we take a look at this side, you'll probably see what I'm talking about, if it'll focus. That motor, when we compress the front, is pushing. Well, let's see if you can see it. Yeah, so that front drive shaft, the motor is resting on that front drive shaft, and in fact these links are just rubbing on the sides of the motor. So what yeah, you can just see there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these links, I'm going to move them down a hole or two and just see if that helps. The motor resting on the drive shaft I'm not too bothered about, because if you look, I've got fullish travel on the shocks, so not the end of the world. At worst it's just going to rub a little bit, but as it's going through those links I can just feel it straining. But yeah, let's pop it on this. I mean, look at that, low rider completely, and that's with the shocks. They've got a little bit of spring to them. Right, here we go. Let's move this truck. Sorry if I'm making anyone feel seasick. Let's go back to the other camera. Right, so copperhead. So what you'll notice on the startup is the wheels start turning and they stay turning at the same speed. Now the sensorless startup on the SW4 with an outrunner and everything, you tend to get a little bit of a initial quick turn and then it slows down. So your truck kind of does this. Not quite that dramatic, but that's how it is. Whereas this, because it's censored, it just starts up slow. And it doesn't start up with any of that annoying whining either. And then as you get deeper into the throttle, you'll hear the motor change, where it changes into sensorless mode, but actually the spur's making so much noise that that's not an issue. And if you look closely, you'll see the front wheels are turning faster than the rears, and I don't know if I've got any stickers or anything that I can actually put on them. Maybe a bit of electrical tape, but it's black, so I don't know how well it'll show up on camera. If I put a piece of tape on there, what we should see, if I cross my fingers, is as we do a full rotation of the rear wheels, we can see that the fronts have done a third of a rotation. So we've got 133% on the front. Built into your gearbox, doesn't need specialised components. If you break a diff gear, you just buy the cheapo Traxxas ones, even second hand sometimes from people who've spent 70 odd quid on their expensive ones. So the only thing I need to do now, well, a couple of things. I need to sort those links out, which I'll do by just whipping the electronics off and sorting the links out, and possibly putting even bigger spacers. Now what I'm going to do, and this will seem crazy, is I'm actually picking the truck up by the member that's, well, by the shaft that the spur gear is attached to. And the reason for that is just to see if there's any flex in the gearbox, and I can't actually feel any flex in that gearbox, so I'm not worried about those spacers. The whole point of this top shield, where it used to be open, is just to stop rocks from pinging on or in it. Now I know they can get under these gaps, now it's on spacers, but I'm not really too bothered. If you look at how low the motor is, can we make this lower? Probably. If we look at how low the motor is in this crawler, I mean that is stupidly low. The motor is just under where my finger is, so probably just in line with the wheel when it's loaded. Yeah, so that motor is underneath the wheels, so the weight is super low. It's all tucked in to the front, so I either need to put in a bigger spacer. In fact, I probably will. I'll put in a combination of a bigger spacer and adjust those links. But yeah, going well so far. I think if I was going to put this in one of my trail trucks where the skid's a bit flatter, I should be able to use my other servo mount that is not yet released. Oh, are these scattergun rails? I've got some scattergun rails here, and on the scattergun there's some holes at the front. Now, normally people mount their servo somewhere around there, but this, instead of sitting on the front like those horrible ones and having your servo stuck in the air, this one sits just there. So it sits on the nose, and what that does is pops your servo there rather than those bumper raised ones. So it's still in the rails, you're still using a panhard bar, but the weight is low, and it's low on the front, so it's actually, you know, nosing the weight down, rather than on here that, as your rails tip back, gets higher and higher. So instead of there, you're down there. That was very interesting to print and design that one. And yeah, so what I'll probably do is use one of those, a panhard bar, and then squeeze an Axe 550 in the front with the 33% overdrive gearbox. But for now, we need to pop these wheels off, because it just makes everything easier, and then mess around with some links, which, that combined with maybe some extra spacers, will have me happily finished, apart from the shell situation. But I'm not going out till Sunday, so I'm not too bothered. I know you're probably thinking, oh, why don't you redesign the gearbox so the motor fits better, blah blah blah. I probably could just print this skid so that the motor sits further backwards, but I'm still going to have drive shaft issues and a few others, so I'm really not too fussed. Yeah, tell me what you think in the chat. Don't be shy. Or don't, you know, people might be chilling. I suppose I never really know what devices people are watching this on, so if you sat on your sofa having a beer, you probably don't want to be typing on your phone. Come on. Or a whiskey, or a rum, or a hot drink if you don't drink like me. I've got one hub that likes to hang on to things. It's annoying. Just bear with me while I get this wheel off. That's annoying. All the others just slide off, but this one just seems to want to hold on for some reason. Probably have to file it down afterwards. Just get a screwdriver and lever it off. There we go. Easy as that. Right. Yeah, so if you look in there, you can see that motor is super low. But the challenge I've got is with a panhard, it's really easy to get the motor nice and low. The panhard will mean that you can offset the motor slightly. Whereas with a 4-link, you've got 2 links that are sort of going out and the motor rests in the middle, which then makes things just a little bit more awkward. So, how am I going to do this? I think I'm just going to whip that ESC off because it's on Velcro and just knock those 2 links off. And I'm just going to have to do, well, I might not have to do angles. At worst, all it's going to do is either push the pinion angle a little bit forwards or a little bit backwards. Right, that's feeling a bit chewed up, so we'll get the old MIP tips on there. Right. Now, how low can I go with these before they foul on the lowers? The links that I'm using are, all of my lowers are centre of gravity remote control. It's a guy in the UK who makes excellent links. There are many people in America who make them, but in the UK, few and far between, and these are machined and done in the UK, and they are super strong. I am very happy. They are all bought with my own money, as is everything on this channel, apart from the odd bearing that I've got from Mossy RC, and that's only because I answer all of his questions when he's got questions, and he runs a bearing business and he gives me bearings for free because I help him out all the time. But otherwise, yeah. And yes, you might have seen adverts recently. I turned on adverts to try and get some help from YouTube, and then I am making a whopping $1 a day, and a live stream earns me an extra 50 cents. So don't think that I'm doing it for the money. It's just to get YouTube's attention in terms of support issues, because it puts you in the partner program and they listen to you for some reason. I mean, I'm sure there's a cat video or a teenager somewhere who makes more money in a few minutes than I will make out of my entire YouTube career. But if I get their attention, it really helps me out. And that's YouTube's attention, not the person who makes cat videos or the teenagers. Right, I am just tidying up the front links. I've moved them down a hole, which means that while it will move them further forwards, it also moves them down. So I think if it is, I'll just pop them off and change the length of them. But holding it up, yeah, if anything, it's just laid the front back slightly. So how does that help me? That helps me in that I've now got so my motor is just rubbing on that link and then just touching the drive shaft. So I am going to have to go with the bigger spacers. So I need to find my nice big chunky black ABS spacers rather than the nylon ones, and then I will probably have to find some longer bolts, which won't be an issue. But this is the joy of prototyping, and this is why it's not on Thingverse right now, because I want to get it right. I obviously don't want to spend forever getting it right so that no one gets to enjoy it, but at the same time, I don't want to waste anyone's time. If anyone's interested in printing their own and testing it, then I can release the files under a WIP Thingverse, and you can go nuts and print your own. But this is a hobby. I'm not doing it for money. and I do have an extremely busy job, 2 children and another one on the way. I'm also looking at moving house, so my ability to answer questions can be limited. So I'm just popping the gearbox off yet again. I'm going to install these longer spacers. So I've currently got 2 long bolts and 2 short bolts. So we need to remedy that situation. But yeah, always open to feedback, always willing to listen. I do apologise on the live chat, I can't pay that much attention at the moment because I'm building stuff, but I will probably watch it back later and just see if I missed anything that you said. I saw someone say thank you a moment ago, and I'm not entirely what for. Yep, whip files. Yeah, I'll get the whip files up. And yeah, we'll see where we get to. I mean, this whole project is here in the States. I make links from the thread. Yes, yes. My front links are just exposed threaded bar. My rear ones are a mix of GPM and the centre of gravity ones. If you can make them yourself, then yeah, they're awesome. Okay, yeah, I'll get the files out as soon as I can. It being the UK, it's getting late here. It's been a busy week at work, so I am close to getting ready for my cup of tea and bedtime. It seems like a very British thing to do, but I do enjoy a good cup of tea, so hey ho. Right. So we've just gone with much bigger spacers, ABS spacers, so compress a bit less. I appreciate the people that keep dropping in the live streams as well. It's nice to have a hobby where you connect with people. It's really cool. Right, there we go. So that is now spaced out much higher. The suspension, yeah, as I said before, I think it's just not quite right. I think it does need to sit. As much as I hate to admit it, it needs to sit about 3 or 4 mil further back and about 1 to 2 mil further over to that direction. Yeah, it's just catching the case. So I think I'm not going to do it now, but I will definitely print a new skid overnight, pop it on ready for tomorrow, or pop it on ready for Sunday, and that skid is going to be, just trying to work it out, yeah, just a little bit further back and off to one side. So I think it's going to be 4 mil backwards, 2 mil that way. Actually, both sides are catching. Yeah, 4 mil back, 1 mil further the other way, and then take it from there. And then I might still space it, but that's not quite the end. So let's get the shell fitted. So I mean, the electrics just drop on, zip tie up, that's all sorted. Wheels you've seen are done. Links are, in fact, I'm just going to check my pinion angles now that I've changed those links. Yeah, there's a slight lean on the front, but it's do that skid, and that's going to be spot on for me. And then depending on your application, like mine, super low, you just want to put some of these little nylon things in. So the majority of the hardware, so just to recap, to build this, you need the 5mm inner diameter, 7mm outer diameter shims in 0.1s and 0.3s. I mean, you can probably just get away with the 0.3s, to be honest. There's enough space in there. You need a TRX Sport gearbox, and then you just need a load of countersunk bolts in varying lengths, mostly 12mm. But then if you're raising or lowering the skid, you want them higher or lower. And then that's it. It uses all the bearings out of your Traxxas gearbox. It uses all of the shafts out of your Traxxas gearbox, out of the single speed gearbox, shuffles them around and gives you 33% overdrive, which I think for something you can print at home is cool. Or at least I think it's cool. I know I designed it, you know. Obviously, you know, you like your own. I do need to sort out these shims as well because they're just skidding around a bit. But that's not the end of the world. In fact, no, they're not causing any major problems, so it's not even worth fixing. Right, shell. Let's do shell. This is a shell that I painted in some previous videos that people didn't really watch because they probably weren't very good. It's got this 3D printed piece in. That's just a spacer, like any of these spacers that are on this. But for now, I'm just going to see if I can get it to fit. Because it also acts as a brace. And I want to make sure that my servo can move up and down as well. Now I just have to pull the rails wide enough to fit that in. And yeah, and then I will solicit your opinions, my devoted audience, as to whether it looks rubbish or not. And to be honest, I don't really care with shells. They're a functional piece. So if I can find the hole, that'll be roughly where it goes. That servo is not going to bump into it at all. And then we tilt it a bit. And then, yeah, that looks rubbish, doesn't it? Let's see what happens. Yeah, the new raked skid is going to cause shell fitment issues, I think. Yeah, I think it's going to end up sitting quite far forwards. I'm going to have to cut into the windscreen at this rate. The problem I've got is the holes that this shell would bolt into. I mean, I can just drill new holes, to be honest. In fact, I think I probably will. I think I'll just get this to sit in the right place and then just drill some new holes in this piece. That said, I want my servo to be able to move all the way up, which it will just hit. So now I've got no idea of how to mount this. Answers on a postcard. I do actually have another shell, but I don't think I've got the time or inclination to paint it before Sunday. So it's a case of whatever fits. No, it's popped out again. Oh, that is flush in there. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Yeah, that doesn't look cool, does it? Because before it kind of rested on and sat properly, whereas now it's not wanting to sit just right. I think in terms of shell, Yeah. Doesn't look great, but needs must. Yeah, the servo's bashing into it now. I wonder if I just run with one of my other shells. What have I got? Yeah. Go with what remains of a Komodo double cab shell. Yeah, it really doesn't. That's not going to work because I would have to cut the roof out, and then the wheels are going to be. Are the wheels going to be hitting this? Yeah, there's going to be wheel rub with that one. Because the ideal would be to have these panels sit flush with the sliders, but I don't think it's gonna go. I think I've trimmed it for a different set of rails, and it's just not going to have it. Oh, that's a challenge. That's a challenge I didn't want. Let's see what happens if I cut out this 3D printed piece. Help if I screw it. And just try and fit the shell normally. Downside is it's shoe glued in, so this is going to be fun. No, that piece isn't coming out without a fight. What other options do I have? I've got a G500 shell. Yeah, that's not going to fit either. And that thing is surprisingly heavy compared to the one that I just had in my hand. Okay, I guess we're going with the weird floaty shell. And I guess that's one of the videos that's coming up soon then, is the crazy idea I've got to paint my other shell. How have I lost the bolts for this shell already? Wow. I am on a roll. Absolutely on a roll. That's impressive. Cool. So, yeah. The size of the shock hoops and the amount I've chopped down this shell just don't seem to fit each other. So I think I'm just going to float it. Holders in the holes for the shock tower to hold it on. That's it. Yeah, that's a good idea. Have I got some? Yes, I have. Right. black body. This could work. Yeah, it could work. I think the tyres are going to rub, so it'll need a bit more of a chop. Yeah, this is the body off my first ever crawler, which was a ready to run G-made Komodo. Pop a wheel on. See to what extent we're going to get tyre rub. I think. Yeah, it's going to be a case of taking some Lexan scissors out on the trail and just chop it down as needed. Good shout. Let me see. I love the green yellow one. It's awesome, but it is mangled. Wait till you see the idea I've got for my new one. I think you're right though. I think what I'm going to do is butcher this one by just cutting 2 slots in for the rails to poke through, and then we'll take it from there. Let's just measure. There we go. I think that's going to be a Dremel job. Yeah, if I get that right, I should be able to just hold it on with a couple of bolts. Yeah, nearly there, nearly there. Just need to extend those, and that's perfect. All right. Just need to take one side a bit longer. Right, there we go. So we've got a body that almost sits on those hoops fully, that I can just hold on with a couple of bolts, which I think is spot on. Just trying to work out, yeah, I'm going to take those holes the full length. Yeah. Right, that's spot on. Right, so those front rails are just peeking through a tiny bit. I am just looking underneath to see what's stopping it, and it's just I've not taken the holes all the way up. I just need to be brave and take them up to the front wipers, and it'll be spot on. Right, there we go. So we have just cut holes on there. They look worse than they are because the light. They are pretty much flat, and yeah, that gets the shell. The shell's now on. I just need to get the right angle of shell, I guess. Try and get it balanced just right for the stance of the truck and the look of the truck. Just trying to see. Yeah, that's quite cool. Right, okay, so what I should be able to do is probably just trying to feel what's stopping it, because there is a plate in it that's for the for this like pretend wiper assembly. ESC out the way. Yeah, cool. Right, that is going to go on there. The sliders are just sticking out ever so slightly, but that's pretty much how it's going to go. To fix it on, I'll get better bolts than this, but I'm probably just going to, in fact, this is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm not going to mess with this at all. Is just squash 2 bolts in there. That's now on. So let's have a quick look at it with some wheels on, and then just try and work out if that's going to bugger up steering or not. So yeah, totally agree. The back shell's pretty cool. I think it does need to be further forwards, which is the problem that I'm having with this truck, is just kind of where the rails sit and everything else, because that's definitely going to foul on this. And so in reality, even though I've just chopped up that front, it wants to sit further forwards. So it might want to be more kind of, yeah, that's where it wants to be, but there's just something stopping it from dropping down, and I can't work out what it is. I think it's the scuttle for the fake windscreen wipers. Yeah, distance. Yeah, maybe. It wants to sit. It really wants to sit there, but this piece that runs across is rock hard and won't flex. So I was going to have to take it off and cut it, because it's already chopped up. It doesn't need fake shock towers on it, fake windscreen wipers on it. I might just glue that back on in a minute. So brutal, but necessary. Right, that's nearly fitting. Yeah, it's actually, the plastic's not, it's not burning so much. It's powder everywhere. Yeah, it's this recess for the fake shock towers that's for the fake windscreen wiper that's causing me the issue, because it wants to sit either before that or behind that. But let's just chop that out. Because as I say, I can always just glue the windscreen wiper piece over the top. To just get a bit of rigidity back and hide this absolute hack job. If anyone's got a good shell idea that isn't a cliffhanger, power wagon, or a Montec rock body, definitely interested. Just dropped an epoxy brush. Aha! Oh, that's so close. If I just take so I'm just taking this, you can see where my finger is, this scuttle out a little bit. If I just take it out a tiny bit, that's where the ends of the shocks are going to sit. So I just need to get that out with my curved Lexan scissors. I tried to cut curves so many times with straight scissors before I realised you could get curved ones. I was absolutely gobsmacked. But I will admit I'm absolutely crap with Lexan scissors anyway, so it's not like my cuts have got any better. It's just a bit easier. Awesome. Right. What a mess. What a mess. But what a mean looking gel. So I'm still debating cutting that scuttle out a bit more, but that is now looking pretty cool. In fact, we're just there. Where's those bolts? Pop those in. 1, 2. Oh, that one's not capturing it as well. Right, there we go. That's as much of a shell as it's going to get right now. I'll tidy up the mounting tomorrow. But I think it's about there. I've got a spacer that runs across as a crossbar, which is just slightly in my way. yeah. In fact, where was that piece I took off? There's only one way to do this, and that's just to be brave. I take out that middle scuttle because it's recessed for no apparent reason, because the thing that sits in it isn't actually that recessed. In fact, I don't know why I'm chopping it with scissors. There we go. Right, that's a lot to chop out, but there is method to my madness. That now fits super well on that top. And if I sort out these servo cables, there, sort that out another time. Yeah, that fits really nicely. Right, I will find a way to mount that tomorrow night. I'm going to go and print off a better skid that is moving this 5 mils back. Oh, knocking things off. Yeah, I'm going to move this gearbox 5 mils back, 1 mil to the right, and then I am super happy with that. That's going to be a low CG monster, and I'll work out the shell tomorrow. Thank you everyone for watching. If you've watched the entire thing, oh my god, you're a superstar. If you haven't, why not? I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and I will catch you all next time. Thank you.